Welcome to Fun and Fundraising, everybody, the podcast where we talk with people behind top nonprofit events to showcase how they positively transform their communities. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, and today I'm thrilled to have my friend Leya Simmons on. And Leya is the co-founder and CEO of an organization called BetterUnite. And this is really going to be a segment about how to utilize event software to make your events more efficient. There's also an event the organization is doing called a Better Conference. So we're going to talk a little bit about that that's coming up as well. So lots of fun things to unpack during our time today. So with that, Leya, welcome. And I'm so thrilled to have you here as a guest today.
Rob, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure. I'm a longtime listener, first time to join on the podcast. And so I love that you do this, and I'm so grateful to have you in our community.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to be a part of it. So, explain to our listeners what the mission of Better Unite is.
Well, the mission of Better Unite, as is stated in our company deck, is quite simple. It is to help the helpers. So we want to help and empower. I don't know if you recognize that. It's actually a little a tip of the hat to Mr. Rogers.
Oh,
And actually, I think technically Mr. Rogers' mother said this to him, that when things are in distress, look for the helpers. So Better Unite wants to help and empower those helpers. And that's the nonprofits that we work with all day. And our technology works in the background to make what they do really shine.
that's fantastic. And who doesn't love Mr. Rogers and his documentary? I'm not sure if you saw it a few years ago. It was a really
Oh,
fascinating take on him.
yes,
What a
100%.
remarkable human being. I mean, really
Mhm.
just, you know,
Who also advocated for public broadcasting systems for nonprofits in his work throughout his life too. So it hits on all the levels for me.
he really did, and his legacy lives on in so many ways. And
Yes.
I want to talk about what motivated you to start Better Unite, because it wasn't you've been involved in the nonprofit community, but I know you had another professional life before this one. So talk about what motivated you to start this.
I did. I'm on iteration. This is Leah 3.0, I guess, if we're counting. Right out of college, I went to graduate school and studied art history. And I had an art gallery in Austin and Austin, Texas, where I'm based, as well as in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And I say that I'm an art dealer in recovery because I enjoyed it, and then I really did not want to be a part of it. But I'm grateful to that experience and that time because that did lead me into nonprofits. I became a member of the advisory committee for a couple of different arts-based organizations here in Austin. I was actually on the board of the Center for the Arts in Jackson Hole. Also through my kids, I had kids pretty young, and so I was, always on their, planning committees for different private preschool, fundraisers and things like that, PTAs, PTOs, all of those do those same kinds of fundraisers. So when I decided that I had done enough with the in the art world, I immediately, I mean, and it was such a seamless transition, turned to working for being on staff for nonprofit organizations. My personal experience and I think still a little bit of my heart lives with the small to medium sized nonprofits that are just, feet on the ground, sometimes board led, small minimal staff, and really doing the mission driven work. So after working within the arts world and as an art dealer, I moved to working in development, so in fundraising for different nonprofits, mostly here in Austin. And I worked for quite a few different ones as a contractor as well as on staff. And again, being in the development and fundraising world, I was immediately thrust into events. I was actually hired a few times to just focus on an event for different organizations. But it was really during my time as the board president of Community Yoga Austin, a teeny tiny nonprofit. We were trying to raise $13,000. That was it for an effort that honestly now I kind of can't even remember. But we used a shall remain nameless fundraising platform that has changed its policies now. But in 2015, we were really just doing a basic peer-to-peer campaign and raising money, this again, small amount. We didn't end up getting to keep the data. We got penalized for not hitting our goal. The platform itself took what I would call a usurious amount of money in the way of fees or tips or whatever they were calling it. And I was just, kind of railing about this and really frustrated by all of this. And I was stuck because, or the organization was stuck because, the software that we needed was too expensive, but we needed the money to, we needed to fundraise to get the money to get the stuff. So we had this like chicken or the egg kind of problem. And we solved it with this bigger platform. So again, it worked. It was good for what we needed. But as I was complaining about this and complaining about this to my now co-founder, he was the whole time like, I could solve this problem. I could solve this problem. And so he did. Actually, technically, he went off and built what is now BetterUnite at its first iteration, which was a peer-to-peer software combined with a CRM. And pretty simple, pretty straightforward donation pages, CRM, peer-to-peer. And then came back to me, and I had gone off to have a baby, and came back to me and was like, really, this is something that you should partner with me on, and we should continue to build it, and you should go talk about it. And I, again, said baby was kind of like, I'm not sure. But it was so enticing, and it was such a cool thing, and it was so fun once I kind of got into it to start. We immediately launched into events, which is a weird, kind of left turn for most software companies, but it was what I knew and what we kind of collectively knew for fundraising. And then that's, the rest is kind of history. We just kept building and growing, and here we are 7 years later with Better Unite.
Wow, that's amazing. And,
Yeah,
I'm fascinated to know this answer as to why the nonprofit space over some spaces, because, with an arc, I mean, there's a lot of different paths and trajectories you
for
could have
sure.
taken. Talk about where this passion to help nonprofits create better event experiences comes from.
Yeah, so to me, the nonprofit sector fills such an important void in the American community. I can't really speak to others, but I do know that obviously NGOs serve a very important role in, worldwide. But in America, there is a distinct, kind of lack of services for marginalized folks, for, children, for the elderly, for animals, the disabled, things like that. Also the arts. So I'm fascinated by this. I actually studied government as an undergrad, so I feel like maybe there's a piece of this that is, at the very most basic level, why I'm interested in nonprofit work as well. But but here in America, we have this wonderful system of nonprofits that we as a community all decide to lift up and to validate with our dollars and say, we need this service, you provide this service, we'll support you, you're a common good, right? And it's outside of the government, it's outside of all of these other pieces. And so I always knew as well intrinsically, and again, my role both as a volunteer and then as on staff with nonprofits was the fundraising components. But I knew that, nonprofits are just inherently limited by the dollars that they have and by what they're able to bring in. And so as much as, Better Unite offers volunteer management, membership management, grants management. So there's a lot of other component parts to nonprofits, obviously, that aren't just around fundraising, but none of the other component parts can happen in the absence of dollars. And because of the structure and the way that it's set up in our American society as it is today, nonprofits have to spend a decent amount of their time managing those dollars and getting them to come in the door. And so like I said, intrinsically always understood this. It was the role that I filled when I worked for the 10 years that I worked for nonprofits, and even more than that now I'm aging myself, but as more than that as a volunteer and a board member and advisory board member and all of those other things. And so it just felt so like right and a part of like my almost DNA to step in and create or co-build something that facilitated fundraising and then the fundraising events. Because again, as I was saying with the nonprofits, nonprofits rely on community so much, and they support that same community. So events are this magical time when those two efforts get to come together, and they're really special. And I know that there's a lot of opinions about events, and that sometimes you'll talk to nonprofit consultants and they're like, oh, here it comes. Or, people that work with nonprofits, they're hard and they take a lot of time and effort. But at their core, they are so intrinsic to the value of nonprofits, and they also make visible to the broader public what the nonprofit itself is doing, as well as the role that the public plays with the nonprofit. So I think I just love that whole concept, and that's where Better Unite has I think filled a really important gap.
It is a really important gap, and I'm really glad that you do that and you do focus on events. Because for me, the one thing I think an event for a nonprofit does that nothing else does is it gets all your donors or the largest number of donors in one room at the same time that you're ever going to have. And there's just something really magical about that. And you can get more money raised for a myriad of reasons. We won't get into those here. Some are altruistic, some are maybe a little bit more high school, but
Sure.
it gets you more money at the end of the day. And one thing that I have appreciated about the evolution of event software, because when I first started going to events 15 years ago,
Oh.
there really wasn't that much of it, if at
Mhm.
all. And so much of it now, especially in COVID, kind of accelerated that. Talk about some of the ways that event software creates a better experience for guests at events.
Well, that's I talk about that all day long. So let me jump on my soapbox. Thank you for the entree. We can start from event creation, right? Like, first of all, one of my key things that I would say to a nonprofit, regardless of what you're going to pick, I truly, doesn't matter if you're choosing Better Unite, well, I think you should. If when you're making that selection, having the team on staff or in the committee or whomever that is going to be using that software, having them be a part of that decision-making process is so huge, because the fact is events today really need to lean on software from the jump. And I could not overstate that more. I think that your question was about the guests. So from the guest perspective, when I'm purchasing my ticket, even when I'm buying my sponsorship, right? So 6 months, 8 months away from the actual event, right after last year's event, whenever it is, I can log my credit card so that when I check in 8 months later, my credit card is already on file so that I'm able to use that card when I'm bidding in the silent auction, live auction. I love not having to enter things multiple times. Great. There's one benefit. For the nonprofit, as I'm buying my sponsorship, my software can go ahead and create the table for me or the team if it's a golf tournament. And then I can, as I'm filling in my guests and my future guests, because maybe I don't know who they are just yet, but I can go back to that later, or the software can remind me to come back in and enter my guests' information, or send the guests, each one of them, their individual tickets. So again, from the moment that I'm purchasing my ticket, I, as a guest, am benefiting from all of the wonderful fluidities that come from automations within event software. Then when I'm checking in, I don't know anyone that likes standing in lines. So event software, when done well and used properly, can really mitigate that, can make those lines very short and very fast. And a lot of the work can be done prior to, and with some, kind of very blatant, I would say, cues, like a text message that says, hey, pre-authorize your card so that event check-in goes really quickly for you. And then there's a designated line for everybody that's already done that. I'm just grabbing my bid paddle. My table number's already in the link that you sent me. I'm there, right? And then when I'm at the silent auction, if I've clicked through the link that you sent me, I'm able to scan the QR code. It pops up open to my page, my bidding page on that item. I'm logging my bid because, again, I registered my credit card 8 months ago, and I can move through there. I'm scanning and viewing all of the live auction items in my link. I'm not having to print out as many programs, or can sit there and spend some time. I could have looked at the live auction items prior to the event, because we all know most live auction items are going to be split, especially trips and things like that, among a couple of different families or groups. So we talk about these big purchases in advance before I even go to the event. At the end of the event, I do not think check-in is a good idea, so I'm going to caveat that at first. Or excuse me, I don't think check-out at the event is a good idea. Leah, the development officer, does not want my guests and my big donors to have the last impression of my beautiful, well-curated event to be transactional and financial in nature. That's not a good idea, particularly when alcohol is involved. But if there was to be a checkout, because maybe I want a silent auction item and I really want to take it home right there, I can make that happen super quickly. I can check myself out through that same magic link. I can, the people, the staff that are on site can quickly go through those and give me that. And then finally, even at the very end, I can have automated, emails and text messages that I receive as the guest that give me the opportunity to fill out a survey about the event. They thank me profusely. They maybe send me a few photos or a video of what occurred and the magic that I was a part of, and the help and the boost to the nonprofit that I got to support. So I mean, again, I could keep going on this, but I went through the timeline at least a little bit because I do think that the right tech can impact literally every step of the guest experience.
Well, and auctions are such an important um, component of fundraising for a lot of nonprofits. Not every
Mhm.
gala does it, but I would certainly say the majority do.
Sure.
Now, talk a little bit about, let's maybe talk about and compare and contrast just from your experience, both as a nonprofit professional and running Better Unite, the differences like between raffles and auctions, and kind of how you see the two of them, and kind of how software can kind of be utilized in one or both, and how you might utilize them in different ways.
Oh, well, I mean, again, another topic that there's so many different ideas and frankly, cool ideas that continue to come out. And, Better Unite supports the efforts of the auctioneers, the event planners, the, development professionals that are actually executing the event. And we love when they come to us and say, here's the thing I'd really like to do. Can you help? So we had an auctioneer come to us with the idea for a raffle wheel, an automated, we can put it up onto the screen. I can click a button, it spins, the names are already there. A name shows up with confetti. And so that raffle wheel has become actually quite popular. And honestly, I was at the first, I was like, oh, it's kind of cool, but it's been this huge hit. So I think that raffles done well can have a really wonderful place within the event. And it's also a space where you might lean into an analog option as well, right? So that there's no tech involved. And it's truly kind of you pick one or the other. For it's either, a hopper where people have gathered physical tickets or purchased physical tickets, you put them in, somebody draws. That's always exciting. And I don't necessarily think there needs to be a tech component. Now you can log the raffle ticket purchases within your software. So checkout is easy and we're not having to have a whole separate thing. But it's kind of either or, right? We're going to pick one or the other. Um, I remember one of the last events that I was a part of planning as a development director, we had a board member that was just very convinced that we needed to go with raffles and not auctions because we could sell these raffle tickets for these, baskets of goods, and it would take a lot less effort than putting together the silent auction. I remember the experience for that one being basically a wash. Like I was kind of like, we raised about the same, and I don't know that the effort was all that different. That said, it would have been a much easier lift if we were doing an analog silent auction. So, right, like using a Better Unite, everything silent auction happens online or through the mobile device. And that makes life, if you've ever put out clipboards, I'm sure, Rob, you've, not only been to, but maybe been a part of these, but the clipboards, writing people's names down, trying to read the names when you're, at the final winner, and then the arguments that happen because no, I wrote in 670, not 690. And I mean, so that piece, if you're in analog silent auction, raffles 100% way easier. You're going to get a better return. I do think that if you went and Google searched raffle versus silent auction, you would get a strong argument on either side if you're picking one or the other. Now, I would argue with, a kind of decent amount of tech and enough staff, you could easily do both and find a kind of nice, bigger raffle prize, sell more expensive raffle tickets and groups of tickets, and then have a silent auction of whatever it is that you were typically going to have. So, I can't say that I would pick one over the other. I see both of them as having their place. And I frankly see a lot of events these days having all three, which I mean silent auction, raffle, and a live auction.
You gave so many wonderful insights and points. And to me, the bottom line that I took away from that is understand your audience and what they want, and especially where a raffle versus a silent auction comes from, understand your audience, because it what may work for one organization, don't copy it if it's not going to resonate with your audience. And that's kind of the thing about raffles. That's still kind of wild westy, I guess, or the most wild westy thing there is in galas right now to a degree is it's really just kind of understanding what your audience wants and then just leaning into that and going forward just so that you can raise the most amount of money possible with the maximum return with the most efficient effort. I won't say the least effort, but with the most efficient effort.
Well, Rob, you and I were I think it was last fall, we were both at the Waterloo Greenway event, Glow
Yes.
in the Park, I think is what it is. And they did a really fascinating thing. They actually they did a small raffle inside of their live auction. Actually, I'm sorry, it wasn't even in the live auction, it was in the Fund a Need. And I thought this was fascinating. And frankly, Anna over there asked us, said, I want to do this thing. And actually, we didn't have the tech at the time, but I got curious about it, and I was kind of like, that seems pretty cool. So what she wanted to do was at different giving levels, she wanted us to, live scribe, easy, that happens all the time. So quick add in everybody into the software, and then quickly pull a name, a winner, so that at the, $10,000 level and the $2,500 level, they were going to draw a winner for, I think it was some jewelry at one, and I can't remember what it was at the other. And, so we built the tech to do it, and it was so cool. And I know. So maybe it's just $10,000 level. I mean, that's still a tough one. But at the $2,500 level, I am positive that Anna and Waterloo increased their revenue at that giving level by having just that little incentive prize to be able to draw from. So I thought that was a really interesting way to incorporate a raffle into a fund a need as opposed to, having that kind of stand on its own.
I love that idea. And it just goes to show that you can run a raffle in so many different
Absolutely.
ways.
Hmm.
And you go to 10 different events and see them run in 10 different ways with
Oh,
10 different
absolutely.
price points of prizes. And that's kind of what makes raffles to me really, really, really fun. And,
Yeah.
before we talk about the conference, I want to ask another question about, just about fundraising and galas in general. So talk about what some reasons are in your mind that these in-person galas and events, because, as you said, not every nonprofit consultant agrees with them, even though we think differently on this program. What are some reasons those in-person galas and events are an important part of the overall fundraising and development pipeline for a nonprofit?
So, you know what? The word you just used right there is pipeline, that I think is really key to that, right? Like, I don't know of a better way for an organization, especially in today's crowded, noisy social world. It's very difficult to get anyone's attention. And this is something that I see all the time. Like, BetterUnite is a for-profit company, so our marketing teams, the work that I do as the CEO, everything is about, like, let's meet IRL in real life. The best and fastest way to get in touch with a group of people is to see them in person. So this is the opportunity that nonprofits get to have with fundraising events. And not only are they getting to see everybody in person, in the flesh, communicate with them directly, they are also able to build community and raise money at the same time. So, when we're doing in-person events like a Better conference that's coming up, we're not really making any money on this. This is not a revenue generator for us. It's really a kind of like fun thing that we want to say thank you for and raise our profile as a brand a little bit more and things like that. With a nonprofit, like, this is an actual revenue opportunity for them, and a significant one a lot of the times when done really well and intelligently. So I just think that events have they've always had a kind of crucial role in the nonprofit ecosystem cycle. And I think that it's important for organizations and brands and different organizations and their brands to lean into that more now than maybe ever before. And to the pipeline point, so not only am I bringing in new people that I wouldn't otherwise be able to reach through an ad campaign, or I just don't care what anybody else says. This is the easiest way, is in person. But also, I'm able to, if we're making them fun, if we're putting the fun and fundraising in these events, then we're attracting, hopefully, a next generation of donors. So I would encourage and I know this is a soapbox you like to get on, Rob, but I would encourage anybody running an event to find a way to place, have at least a price point that a younger generation can afford to purchase some tickets so that they can come experience, again, the magic, the mission, the ethos of your nonprofit, so that when they're later donating and they're deciding what they're giving to, you are in there somewhere, right? Because I don't know of a better way. And I think that the data will show us right now. The Giving USA report's about to come out, but the Fundraising Effectiveness Project for 2020, it's the 2025, but looking at 2024, is all showing us that donations are continuing to increase, marginally, slightly, but those increases are coming exclusively from supersized donors. Where we're losing donors are in the small and micro donations. And those small and micro donations are primarily coming from our young millennials and Gen Zs. And if we don't have them in our pipeline, as the greatest transfer of wealth is about to occur with baby boomers moving at $13 trillion, I think it's like $70 trillion will migrate to younger
Wow.
generations, but 13 trillion of that will go to different nonprofits. Then you don't have your eye on the $13 trillion that's coming in the next 20 years. So I think that cultivating that pipeline of new donors, best and easiest way to do that, in-person events.
Absolutely and completely agree. And there's a whole host of different ways to do it. And if you're with a larger organization or have a larger organization, consider starting a young professionals group for your organization. There's
Oh,
some all throughout Texas that are very, very effective and very well done. And that's a great way to build that pipeline, so that you're getting multi-generation stuff and that it just doesn't stop with the person's, with the new donor, we'll call them the new donor in 20 years, parents who are no
that's right.
longer on the planet, and they have stewardship of it. So getting those people
Absolutely.
involved at a younger age it's critically important. I'm really glad you brought that piece up. And I'd love for you to share what motivated you to create a Better Conference as an additional offering, for Better Unite.
So a Better Conference was the inaugural event was last year. It was very exciting and so much fun and so much work. But the idea was, so for me, as aforementioned community yoga Austin, I'm a longtime yogi, longtime yoga teacher. Mindfulness and self-care practices have been, life-saving, to put it even mildly, in my personal life. And so that's always a central focus for me in my professional life with Better Unite. Julie Shannon of Big Mission actually came to us and was talking about, she'd always kind of wanted to do this treat yourself kind of pampering event for nonprofit executive directors, development directors, really anybody working for nonprofits. We, at the time when Julie was mentioning this, were looking to find a way to, kind of celebrate the organizations that we had here in Austin. We have a big footprint here in Austin, or in Dallas and Houston and San Antonio as well. And through several conversations, a Better Conference was born. Julie's idea of pampering led right into my, the predominance of self-care in my world, and the something that's actually, as a company, we talk about quite a bit. And so we just leaned into it and pressed go. Really, I don't have another better way to say it. It was like this intriguing idea. And I honestly think it was maybe in April of last year, and we had a conference in September, which is, I don't
That's
recommend
a
that.
short one way, yeah.
It was really stressful. Our amazing Emma on our team and Julie, and it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work with a great and wonderful team. So we did it. This year we're back. We gathered, and you were a part of it last year, and you gave us amazing feedback afterwards as well. We did the post-event surveys. We looked at all of the data. And we really kind of refined what we wanted to offer, as well as continue to add the educational opportunity. So I keep saying it's like the best smelling conference out there. I don't know if you remember that, Rob, but there's essential oils everywhere. We start the morning with optional yoga and meditation and sound bath, and then we have a mix of wellness seminars, keynote speaker, as well as sessions and breakout sessions. and a lot of information for nonprofits. So it's absolutely educational for nonprofit attendees. We want them to feel community, have networking opportunities, as well as get informed about the latest trends within fundraising and event spaces, and have the opportunity to get a quick chair massage and their tarot cards read and create their own essential oil blend. So honestly, when the ideas came about, I was like, can we really pull this off? And we did, and it's really exciting. And honestly has become now one of my favorite things that I get to be a part of.
That's amazing. And I'm really glad that you add the wellness component of it because development jobs in the nonprofit space are extremely high, high stress
High
jobs.
stress, high turnover rates. We get the
Yeah.
high turnover rates because the people burn out. I mean, there's you have what, 10 bosses in your board of directors, plus your executive director, plus whomever else happens to be in that space. You've been given 15 jobs to do. There's never enough money. You're charged with creating and building all of the capital for the entire organization to run. So I mean, it's an unusually heavy stress load. And the only way I think that nonprofits can, kind of, we can help to mitigate the burnout, then the turnover rates within our nonprofit communities, is to lean into these ideas and honestly sometimes just practice what we preach and have people, stop, pause, take a breath, do something different, let your mind get expansive for a day or 2 days. This year we did expand to 2 days. So we have a tech masterclass the first day that will still involve some self-care components. And then the second day is the full-blown conference. But I do think it's so important to reset, to rest, recharge, and also really connect with community, other like-minded people.
Absolutely. And, I just, it wouldn't surprise me in the least if some people were to say, like in this year's post-event survey, what they took away from it most is that I need to put the oxygen mask on myself first sometimes. That's why I think the wellness component is so critical. And I think it's just so clever and so unique with what you do is development professionals in particular really need that. And to just understand you've got to be healthy in order to make other people in your community healthy because that's really what the nonprofit space is all about.
I couldn't have said it better, Rob. I'm writing that one down actually.
Now, I know, you had mentioned tech and, the full-blown conference. So how will a better conference kind of, tap into or acknowledge some of the trends? And maybe you can share here some of the trends you're kind of seeing about how nonprofits are utilizing event software.
Absolutely. So we get a lot of questions these days, and nonprofits and everybody is very curious about AI, right? Like how can we best utilize this kind of amorphous thing that's shown up, 2 years ago? I still don't totally get it. I'm not sure how to use it myself, much less implement it for my entire organization or for my event. And I think that the key building block of AI and all tech, frankly, is data. And so we're leaning into this year that tech masterclass is we have a session on AI and just utilizing AI as nonprofits. We also have a session from Canva. So utilizing built-in these big tools that we all use that have these built-in AI components, but that maybe because we don't typically keep our storehouses of data either in one place or very clean, then we're not fully, kind of using to the max these things that we've already got that are there. And so, that's where these unified systems like a BetterUnite and there's others as well, they really do come into play as we move into this next age of data being king, right? We need to have all of our information in a central brain so that we can best utilize that information when we're looking at, what should my giving levels be, looking at the data and information from last year's event, who attended last year's event. Just to your point, Rob, about knowing your audience, how would I say this? I can best guess my audience this year by looking at the information from last year, because I know that I'm going to get some of the same people in the room. Of course, there's going to be differences, but looking at that information every year right after the event, and then again before we create the ticket levels, then again look at the information before we create our donation levels, then again before we decide what's going to be in our silent and live auctions. I can pull a quick, I can insert that information in BetterUnite. We call it Better Insights, into our Better Insights tool, and I can see the top interests of the people that attended last year. It's based on an aggregate data, blind data within an LLM. Anyway, a lot of techies, but there's a lot of cool stuff that can get done that can inform your events moving forward by looking backwards. And so having tools and having the skills to utilize those tools will be a focus of that tech masterclass. Sorry, that
Very,
was kind of a long answer to get there.
very well
Land
said.
the
Well,
plane.
no, but that was very well said with the AI. And for anybody listening, and I know some people, at least one person listening at home is thinking, well, how do I get everybody to come back? And the answer is you don't. You don't
No,
want every single person to come back because then you would just be reinventing the wheel and completely replicating what you did the year before, and you will never be able to create that magic from that night with that audience again.
that's
So
a great thing to say and remind people, Rob. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm glad you
ab
said that.
absolutely. It's just make sure of that because I know what Leah said with AI, it can feel overwhelming because tech can feel overwhelming. But at the end of the day, the goal is never to get every single person back because that's
No,
just your event won't evolve, it won't grow, and it won't grow with the community if you do that. So I'm really glad you
absolutely.
brought that up. So I know we're coming up on time today, but I want to end with this. And you're probably one of the most uniquely qualified people I've ever asked this question to. And that is, what do all great nonprofit events have in common?
Oh, okay. Well, I do attend a lot of events. Um, I think that, okay, I'm going to go meta on this question. I'll zoom out to say, and I'm going to borrow the concept from a guy named Russell James. He's a professor at Tech. He's does a lot of great work on looking at donors and donations and fundraising and how and why people give, right? But he talks about centering the donor as the hero in your story. So I think all great events center the guest. I think that when an event from the jump, from the start, like I said, with just immediately when I'm purchasing my sponsorship, looking at and understanding who that guest is, what they want to see, what their most their best and easiest path to getting to your event, to enjoying, keyword, I know the fun and fundraising, enjoying your event and then donating at your event. I think that's where really great events can shine. The hero is the donor or the guest. The organization is the weapon of that hero, right? The hero gets to use the weapon of the organization to do good in the world. And I think, a lot of times we'll see, and Rob, you know this as well as I do, that nonprofits center the nonprofit. And that, I mean, I get that, right? Like that makes sense. That's what you would think, right? But when you center the guest as the hero and consider your nonprofit as the weapon, that's when great events occur.
And great events, that is a mic drop moment. And the thing is that all great events are an ensemble
A
and
hundred
they
percent.
work with the nonprofit and the guest. And the guest can't be too big for their britches, and the nonprofit can't think that they just rule the roost. There has to be that yin and yang, and that's what creates that experience. And that's why events can be so powerful because people will then talk about them for
Yeah.
weeks and months
Oh,
afterwards.
years as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some events that I attended 10 years ago that I still talk about, and people will be
Same.
like, well, what's something you remember? And I'll be like, well, in 2014, I mean, I've been doing this way too
That
long,
breakfast
right?
I went to in 2018, I still have one of those.
Exactly. Well, this was an absolute pleasure, Leah. Thank you so much for joining us today. I had an absolute blast chatting with you.
Me too, Rob. Thank you. Thank you so much for this wonderful podcast and the service you provide to our community. I'm so grateful to you.
Absolutely. And a better conference will be held on September 11th, 2025 at the Junior League of Austin campus in Austin, Texas. For more information, please visit betterunite.com. And that will do it for this episode of Fun and Fundraising. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, reminding you to keep it fun, keep it interesting, and your guests will have a great time. Have a great day, everyone, and take care.